extremely grateful to you, sir, for the opportunity to participate in this webinar. And I will start off with our experience of COVID and how do we prepare ourselves for the post-COVID period. First of all, as professionals, we were always requested by various governments for our suggestions and advice. And most of the doctors, being doctors, we told the government that let us assume that virus will behave exactly how it behaved in Italy, in England, in the US. And patients will behave exactly the same way as they have behaved in these countries. Let us not think that India is an exception. Let us not think that the Indian summer will protect us or Indian immunity will protect us. So let us prepare ourselves for the worst, and if best happens, we should thank God. And fortunately, our government implemented all the policies recommended by the experts. And in the process, we have been able to control COVID to quite a large extent. Looking back, I know a lot of people today question whether early lockdown was required and was it required to be extended for that period of time. I just want to let you know that being a senior doctor, practicing in different parts of the world, settling down in India for over 30 years in medical practice, if we didn't go for an early lockdown, it would have been a disaster. Why? Because when the COVID first surfaced, country had less than 35,000 ventilators. And we are a country of 1.3 billion people. We had hardly 3 PPE manufacturers. When US was running out of ventilator, when US was running out of PPE, what about India? There is no way we could have managed to protect our people if the COVID hit us 1 month in advance. Fortunately, this 1 month of period gave us enough time to introspect, prepare ourselves. Today, thanks to the entrepreneurship of Indian youngsters and corporates, thanks to the proactive steps taken by the government, I just want to put in record that our government reacted and acted at the right time, did everything possible within their means to ensure that every citizen is protected. It is good to talk about social distancing will protect our people. Yes, it does protect, but I'm not sure how many of you visited Dharavi slum in Bombay. How can you practice social distancing in a country where people virtually live on each other's lap? This is the culture. We have no problem in touching others. We live in a small cramped house. Rooms are shared by multiple people. So these are the luxuries we don't have. The only weapon we had was lockdown. And that was implemented very rigidly. And interestingly, you would have seen that some states kept the COVID number extremely low, whereas some other states had a high number. We could predict as doctors that this is going to happen based on the way the lockdown was practiced, not implemented by the government itself, but the way the people reacted. I had a simple formula. If any state, any city where wedding shopping was possible during lockdown, I predicted they will be in trouble. If a city didn't allow wedding shopping during lockdown, they are safe. And this is exactly what happened. Bangalore, Karnataka state implemented lockdown very rigidly. In the process, we are enjoying the benefits. We are still far better off compared to the other parts of the country and other parts of the world. Today, India has over few hundred PPE manufacturers. We have the capability to manufacture millions of PPEs. We can virtually supply the PPE for the whole world because we have a very mature textile industry. All they had to do was to, instead of stitching luxury garments, they started stitching PPEs. We have today capacity to manufacture few thousand ventilators every day if required. This is the strength of this great country. Now, the scenario, first, I just want to put it in record that the first round of our battle against COVID was fought by the government doctors. Most of the state governments decided to confine all the COVID patients to few government hospitals. And this is the best thing they did. If government decided to spread the COVID positive patients across the state in private hospitals and government hospitals, it would have been disastrous. Because statistically, it has been proven, at least in the early stage, till they understood what COVID, how it spreads and its behavior, mode of spread. If you mix COVID and non-COVID, significant percentage of the non-COVID patients became COVID positive. But today we have learned how to segregate. Things are different. So by confining all the patients to the government hospital, few big government hospitals where large number of patients are concentrated, we protected most of the people. We protected large number of health workers. Now when the number is increasing as expected after the lockdown, today we have enough doctors, enough beds available in the private sector to manage the gradually increasing number of COVID patients. So strategically, I want to congratulate the government and the government doctors for taking the brunt. Now, addressing the people as a whole, I just want you to remember, COVID is not going to disappear tomorrow or day after tomorrow. It is going to be here for 1 year or at least 1.5, 2 years. But it will not be widely spreading the way it is now. There will be sporadic cases of COVID appearing in some part of the country. It will spread and straight away that particular area will be locked down and it will be confined. So it will become like one of those lingering SARS infection, the malaria, TB, everything what we are used to. COVID also will become a similar disease. Now, it is very important that every citizen has to change their attitude towards personal hygiene. I was very critical of people wearing masks. I always thought as a surgeon, mask is meant for the surgeons. Mask is not meant for the people. Today, we have overwhelming evidence to show that when large majority of the people in a particular state continue to wear face mask made up of any material, mainly cloth mask, the spread of COVID comes down significantly. So it may not be very fashionable to run around with the face mask, but we have no choice. My request to every citizen is, until the last patient of COVID gets cured in India, please do not leave your house without mask. You are going to do a great service to yourself and to the fellow citizens. Personal hygiene in terms of washing hands for at least 20 seconds, at least once in few hours. The minimizing social engagements and touching people. We are very famous for hugging people, touching. It's good gesture. That is our culture. But we have to, even your loved ones, your grandchildren, your children, please try to resist the temptation of hugging them these times. So the essentially it is very important for us to, you would have seen the high mortality in the US. You would have seen very high mortality in some of the European countries. But mortality in India is extremely low. Why? Predominantly because the average age of Indians, I guess, is about 26 years, 26, 27 years. The average age of a European is 46, 47 years. So COVID is known to cause high mortality among elderly and among the people who have coexisting diseases. Now that heart problem is, as Indians, we are genetically 3 times more vulnerable for heart disease. A lot of you may be worried about, as heart patients, about your vulnerability. I have a very simple advice for all of you. If you are a heart patient, please do not venture out of the house, at least for the time being in India, until it is absolutely required. And have a minimum number of people visiting your house. Avoid all the social engagements, because we know that even with the healthy lifestyle, if you're a heart patient, your chances of landing in serious trouble if you acquire COVID is very high. So do not take chances. Anyone past the age of 60, again, should practice the same thing what I have suggested, because you're all vulnerable. Age is a high risk factor. Coexisting condition like hypertension, diabetes, heart problem, the immunosuppressive treatment for various illnesses. These are the people who have to keep themselves away from the rest of the crowd as much as possible. Now, God forbid if the COVID becomes really a big problem spreading all across the country. Are we in a position to withstand it or prepare? Are we in a position to manage it? Yes. If there is one country which can manage massive number of patients needing hospitalization, India is one country which can manage. Why? The reason is, this is one of the countries which is blessed with the largest number of medical colleges in the world. We produce the largest number of doctors in the world. We produce one of the largest number of nurses in the world. So essentially, we have skilled manpower. Our weakest point are the 740 district hospitals, where there is an acute shortage of medical specialists, to the extent of 80% shortage. But if they are pushed, we can mobilize easily 50,000 to 1 lakh doctors who have some degree of experience in ICU by modifying the regulation of medical council. There are thousands of doctors who are already trained as emergency medicine specialists or as critical care specialists or anesthetists in various areas. Some tweaking of the medical council regulation, we can bring all this young workforce to the public hospital, and in no time, we will have a formidable workforce to tackle this pandemic. Now, are we short of ICU beds? Yes, we are short of ICU beds. I'll give an example. You would have seen Germany has one of the least mortality following COVID because they have, I think, about 29 ICU beds for a lakh population. Italy has about 14 ICU beds for a lakh population. England has about 7. I guess India has maybe 1 or 2. But if there is a requirement, we are sitting with 500 big medical colleges with over 500 to 1,000 beds. And most of their beds can be converted as ICU beds to manage COVID patients just by putting few cardiac monitors. And in India, there are enough startups who can come up with these cardiac monitors in very short period of time. So we are blessed to be living in a country where in a what we call as a jugaad, in a very short period of time, we can manage ourselves to address the crisis. The next thing I would like to talk to you about how is the healthcare going to be post COVID. First thing is, right now the states have liberalized lockdown. Patients can move around from one part of the state to the other part of the state. Even interstate travel is allowed. But our biggest problem is the fear of the people suffering from other illnesses like cancer, heart problem, some other major illnesses. They are scared to go to the hospital. Believe me, most hospitals today have established a different flow for COVID patients and non-COVID patients. I'll give an example. Our health city in Bangalore, we have in one campus 4 big hospitals for four different specialties. It's a 30-acre campus, so there is no question of crowding. We have a separate building which was used earlier as an international center for accommodating foreign patients' family. In a matter of 3 weeks, entire 60 or 70 beds were converted as a critical care bed for a COVID patients. So that this particular complex annex has a separate entrance, there is a separate lot of doctors, everything is separate. So we have conveniently separated the area for treating non-COVID patients and COVID patients. Similar thing is done by many hospitals. Every hospital is competing with each other today to make their hospital COVID safe for the non-COVID patients. Dr. Bandari was telling me that in New York, the mortality of non-COVID is increasing because people are reluctant to go to the hospital. Please do not do this, because if you develop a heart attack, you have only 6 hours of period called golden period of heart attack. With the fear of COVID, if you do not go to the hospital and get admitted to the ICU, your heart muscle will be damaged. And most of the mortality following heart attack happens in the first few hours. So this is my suggestion. If you need any care, please do not keep away from the hospital. How is the healthcare of the future is going to be? Believe me, healthcare of future is going to be dramatically different. After the lockdown started, I'm not sure whether you're aware, about 14% of the heart surgery done in India is done by our group. We have hospitals in multiple locations. We have thousands of patients, actually lakhs of patients who are operated, treated by us. And there are a few thousand patients who are on a daily basis visiting our hospital. Now, what about them? So in a record period of less than 10 days, our software division launched the online telemedicine program so that the patients sitting in their bedroom can see us in our mobile phone. So this program took off very fast. Today we are seeing hundreds of patients every day online, and most of the follow-up of patients who had surgery is done online. Now we are developing tools in which every patient can have their medical records in their own mobile phone. If you have your medical records in your own mobile phone, believe me, it can protect your life. If you are a heart patient, you had a heart attack, and any doctor looking at your ECG knows that you had a small heart attack, because the ECG has the description of your heart attack and which zone it was affected. Now, you have no medical records, you travel to other city or other country, and at 2 o'clock at night, you develop chest discomfort, maybe due to indigestion. You land in an ICU, and the doctor there will ask you whether you have any history of any problem. You say you had a heart attack. But the next thing he wants to see is your ECG. And you have no ECG with you, and there is no way you can get your ECG from home. So he will do the ECG and ECG will show heart attack evidence. And he will be lost to know whether it's a new heart attack or the old heart attack. So in the process, to be on the safer side, he can give you an injection called streptokinase or any of those injections, which can digest the clot, which can potentially cause bleeding into your brain, and people can die. All you needed was a ECG in your mobile phone. So we request every citizen of the world with some medical condition, please have your medical records in your own mobile phone. Because wherever you go, mobile phone is with you wherever you go. People today forget their spouse, but they never forget their mobile phone. So it is the best tool to have in your mobile, all your medical records. Now with the Indian Medical Council legalizing online consultation, today I'm convinced that most of the patients, the first visit to the doctor will happen online. And by going online, the advantage is you can choose your time and doctor can choose his time. And today, most of the in good old days, I agree that we needed to examine you to get all the details about your heart or the abdomen or whatever. Today, when a heart patient comes to see me, they had a echocardiogram, they had a cardiac angiogram, they had a cardiac MRI, they had a stress thallium scan. They have details about every cells of their heart. What am I going to learn by putting my stethoscope on their chest other than the satisfaction? So believe me, a doctor can do great justice to you by going through all your medical records and advising you about the future course of action. This will dramatically change the way healthcare is delivered in a country like India, mainly because I'll give one example. We have 70 million diabetics. Do you know how many diabetologists are there in the country? There are 600 diabetologists. Let's assume 1,000 diabetologists. Is it possible for every diabetic patient to see a diabetologist at least once in his lifetime? It is not possible. But once you go online route, believe me, 1,000 diabetologists, 1,000 doctors who can treat diabetes can cover 70 million people just by having few nurses who are trained as diabetic counselors and some young assistant doctors. And we are now treating over 6,000 patients online with diabetes. And you'll be surprised to hear that the patients whose diabetes is controlled online, when I say online, every time the blood sugar goes up and down, they don't go to see the doctor. They just take a photograph of the glucometer and in a mobile phone app, it goes to our counselors. Counselors will talk to the diabetologist and they change the dose of the medicine. We have noticed that the glycosylated hemoglobin, which indicates the control of diabetes, is much better on patients who are treated online than offline with the doctors sitting in front of the patient. And this will happen with every disease. In the near future, you will have a doctor in your own pocket inside your mobile phone. When you develop chest discomfort, when you develop tummy ache or a headache at 2 o'clock at night, you're not going to say that I will consult the doctor tomorrow morning. All you're going to do is to touch one button and the emergency doctor from your own hospital will be online. He has, as he is talking to you, he will be looking at your entire medical records and he knows exactly who is talking to, what your previous illnesses are, what medications you are taking, and what the current symptom has relationship to. And he will decide whether you can continue to sleep or he will send you an ambulance to pick you up and bring you back to the hospital. So essentially, these are not rocket sciences. All these tools are already available. COVID has made it, COVID has expedited this transition. And believe me, these transitions are not reversible. This is going to stay. So a patient with the heart failure who goes in and out of the ICU, believe me, once they're managed online, their heart failure will be better managed. We conduct one of the largest number of heart transplants in the country. We noticed patients, when we started putting them on heart failure management online, we noticed quite a few patients who were listed for a transplant. We could postpone their transplant by 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. It was unthinkable. The other area where there will be a massive transformation will be the critical care unit. Today, when you hear a 100-bed hospital, generally 20% of the beds in the 100-bed hospital are ICU beds, and 80% of the beds are ward and room beds. 10 years from now, the ratio will get reversed. When you say hospital bed, most of the beds in the hospital will be critical care beds. Whatever you did to the patient in the ward or in a room, you will do it online at home. When this massive surge of critical care units come up, there will be a serious crisis. And that crisis is going to be acute shortage of critical care specialists. They are called intensivists. They are the people who manage patients who are very unwell, connected to a ventilator, intra-aortic balloon pump, artificial heart, dialysis. Patient is very unwell in the ICU. These are the experts who know how to juggle with all these gadgets and bring the patient out. Now, these doctors are extremely skilled, extremely knowledgeable, extremely experienced, but you cannot have thousands of them treating you after 6 o'clock in the evening. Critical care unit across the world, in India, US, Europe, gets the best care between 9 to 5. 16 hours in a day, critical care unit is managed by less experienced doctors and junior nurses. So a critical care patient is not critical between 9 to 5. He is critical throughout the 24 hours. But it is impossible for any hospital, any country to have that experienced doctors. Now, there is another problem. Irrespective of the passion, dedication, experience of a senior doctor, the level of his attention, level of his ability to take the right decision at 2 o'clock at night is dramatically different than 2 o'clock in the afternoon. As a doctor, let me tell you that at night we do not like to take decisions because biologically we are not within ourselves to take the right decision to save the patient's life. As much as possible, we like to keep it to the daytime. But that is not ideal for the patient. We have to make hospitals safe for the patients. So what we are trying to do is to build the tools so that every data a doctor sees in the critical care unit standing beside the patient, he looks at the cardiac monitor, he looks at the ventilator, he looks at the syringe pumps, he looks at the blood gas reports, he looks at the urine output. Everything is digitized. And the entire data can be seen by the doctor at home in his bedroom. So we want to split 16 hours of the 24-hour cycle into 4-hour slots so that no senior doctor works from home at night for more than 4 hours. And they work in rotation. So a doctor, the doctor staying at home, he can see the patient in his desktop or a mobile phone or wherever he is and take the decision exactly how he would take the decision. He's standing on the bedside. He can see the patient. He can talk to his junior doctors near the bedside. Now, this is the first lap. The second lap is, we have a hospital in Cayman Island. When it is 12 o'clock at night, it is 11 o'clock in the afternoon in India. So what we plan to do is, at night, Cayman Island Hospital, ICU is managed by doctors from Bangalore, but doctors from India, one of our doctors, wherever they are, Calcutta, Bangalore, Delhi, wherever. And similarly, when it is night in India, our Cayman Island doctors when it's the daytime, they will manage. So we can give the best possible care to the patients. We want hospital to become safer for the patient. Now, when I talk about hospital becoming safer for the patient, a lot of you think that what is he talking about? Hospitals are the safest places for the patients. I'm sorry, you're mistaken. Hospitals are not the safest place for the patients. Let's look at the US hospital, leave alone Indian hospitals. US hospitals are some of the safest hospitals on the planet. If 200 patients get admitted to an American hospital and spend just 24 hours, 1 in 200 dies due to medical error. Not medical negligence, medical error. Getting admitted to an American hospital is 10 times riskier than skydiving. Why? Because every hospital has a process, every hospital has a protocol. But these protocols are all written down in a piece in the big file, and that's in the shelf. So somewhere somebody misses the protocol and some disaster happens. Now, why this happens? This happens only because of one reason. If you take one step, if you make one change in healthcare, believe me, healthcare, the morbidity, mortality in the hospital may come down by 30% to 50%. This is my guess. Now, what is that one thing you have to do to make hospital safer for the patients? Take away the pen and paper from the hands of doctors, nurses, and medical technicians. Have smart digital tool which interacts with each other and analytic tool to tell the doctors what is going on with the patient. There are 4 tasks doctors generally do in a hospital. Doctors and nurses. Let's look at a patient who is admitted to the ward for some medical illness. Now, what is the job of a nurse? Every 4 hours, she goes to the bedside, she checks the blood pressure, she checks the pulse rate, she checks the respiratory rate, and the various parameters, the temperature and various things. And we have a battalion of nurses doing it. Is it really required? We have a startup in Bangalore. They have designed a very tiny telemetry device. It hardly costs some 20,000 rupees. You attach to the patient. It can give real-time ECG with analytics, with all the analytics showing what exactly the ECG is saying. It can give you the pulse rate. This device can give you the oximetry, that is how much oxygen patient has in his body. It can give the respiratory rate. It can give the temperature. It can give the blood pressure. All these are online, continuously collected from the patient, much more accurate, much more precise than any of the nurses, the way they record it. It is possible. And these are very inexpensive device. And these devices give the data which can be seen by doctors sitting at home. And this is again not a rocket science. All these the changes were happening, but COVID has expedited all these changes. So essentially, a lot of the things what we look at in healthcare will be dramatically different than what we are looking at today. Like in the ICU, we have huge ICU. Our hospital have 100 bed, 200 bed ICUs. And there are nurses, patients, doctors going in and out. In between that, there are a large number of support staff who are collecting the blood sample for the blood gases or bringing the material. There is a startup in Kerala we have tied up with. They have developed a robot, a very inexpensive robot. It can be programmed to take any of those stuff from the bedside of the patient to the blood gas machine or to the store. So you minimize the human interaction with the patient, because every support staff comes, they're potential carriers of the infection. Not only COVID, even non-COVID infection. So you replace all these support structure what is required for healthcare with automation and digitization, and it is going to be a different world altogether. I would like to thank Dr. Bandari and the organization for giving me the opportunity, and I'm happy to answer any of your questions.